I'm 28 years old, a woman who has always tried to keep the peace. My sister Lily is 2 years younger. She has always been the center of attention. I never minded. I found my own quiet corners in the world while she soaked up the spotlight. I thought we had an understanding. I thought we were sisters even if we were different. But then came her engagement party, a night that was supposed to be about celebrating her future. It turned into the moment I realized our entire relationship was built on a lie she had been telling everyone, including me. The room was filled with soft music and the clinking of glasses. Friends and family milled around, congratulating Lily and her fiancé, David. I stood near the back, content to watch. I had already given them my gift and my best wishes. I was doing my part, playing the supportive older sister. Then Lily tapped a spoon against her champagne flute, calling for everyone's attention. A hush fell over the crowd. David stood beside her, beaming, his arm wrapped around her waist. "I just want to thank you all for coming," she began, her voice sweet and a little shaky, the way it always got when she wanted to seem vulnerable. "It means the world to have our loved ones here with us." She smiled at David, then her eyes scanned the room. They landed on me. A small, cold knot formed in my stomach. I knew that look. It was the look she got before she said something that was meant to sound innocent but was really a carefully aimed dart. "Most of you know my sister, Clara," she continued, her voice gaining a new, sharper edge. "We've been through everything together. We've shared clothes, secrets, and dreams." A few people smiled in my direction. I forced a smile back, my hands growing clammy. This felt wrong. This was not a normal toast. "But some things you can't share," Lily said, her smile tightening. "Some things are not meant to be taken. For my whole life, I've watched as Clara got the things I wanted. It felt like she stole my life, piece by piece." The room went completely silent. The air crackled with tension. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, filled with confusion and pity. My face burned with shame. What was she doing? Why was she doing this here now? I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. David looked confused, whispering something in her ear, but she ignored him. She was looking directly at me, her eyes glittering with something that looked like triumph. "And now," she said, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper, "it seems she has stolen my man." A collective gasp went through the room. My mind went blank. Stolen her man? She was talking about David, the man standing right next to her. The accusation was insane. I barely knew him. I had only met him a few times at family dinners. I felt a wave of nausea. This was a nightmare. She was publicly accusing me of trying to sabotage her engagement in front of everyone we knew. My mother was staring at me, her face pale with shock. My father looked angry, but I couldn't tell if his anger was directed at Lily or at me. I stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to defend myself. Her words hung in the air, thick and poisonous. And in that perfect, horrible silence, the double doors at the back of the room swung open. A man stood there, looking around with a hesitant expression. He was holding a small gift bag. It was Mark, my ex-boyfriend. The man I had broken up with over 6 months ago. The man I hadn't spoken to since. His eyes found mine across the room. His expression shifted from uncertainty to complete confusion. Lily's dramatic declaration still echoed in the silence, and now my ex had just walked in. Her words, "She stole my man," suddenly had a new, bizarre target. Everyone turned to look at Mark, then back at me, then at Lily. The story she had just painted of me as a desperate homewrecker suddenly had a strange, living prop, and I had no idea why he was there. The silence that followed was worse than the accusation itself. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket of judgment. David let go of Lily's waist, his smile gone. He looked from me to Mark, his brow furrowed in deep confusion. Lily's triumphant expression faltered for a second. This was not the reaction she had expected. The arrival of Mark had complicated her perfect, simple story. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, dissecting my reaction. Was I surprised? Was I guilty? I could see the questions forming in their minds. My own mind was racing. Why was Mark here? Who invited him? We had not ended on bad terms, but we certainly were not friends who showed up at each other's family events. Lily recovered quickly. She let out a small, theatrical sigh. "See?" she whispered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "The drama just follows her." That little comment was the spark that burned through my shock. It was so perfectly Lily. Create a fire, and then blame someone else for the smoke. I took a deep breath. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I had to get out of there. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't breathe. I turned and walked toward the exit, not the one Mark was standing in, but a side door leading to a patio. I didn't run. I walked with as much dignity as I could manage, feeling the weight of everyone's stares on my back. I pushed the door open and stepped out into the cool night air. The music and chatter from the party seemed to fade into a dull hum. I leaned against the stone railing, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a petty sibling rivalry anymore. This was a public declaration of war. She had accused me of something monstrous in front of our entire family and all her friends, and the timing of Mark's arrival was too perfect to be a coincidence. It felt like a setup. A carefully orchestrated scene designed to cause me the maximum amount of humiliation. The patio door opened behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I just wanted to disappear. "Clara?" a soft voice said. It was my cousin, Sarah. She was one of the few people in the family who had always been neutral, a safe harbor in the storm of my family's dynamics. "I'm fine," I said, my voice hoarse. It was a lie, and we both knew it. "No, you're not," she said, coming to stand beside me at the railing. "What was that? What is Lily doing?" "I don't know," I whispered, shaking my head. "I have no idea. I barely speak to David. I haven't seen Mark in months." "He looked as surprised as you did," Sarah noted. "Did you know he was coming?" "No," I said, the word coming out sharper than I intended. "Of course not. Why would I invite my ex to my sister's engagement party?" That was the question, wasn't it? Why would anyone do that? It made no sense. Unless the goal was to create chaos, to make me look unstable and reckless. A goal Lily seemed to have achieved with stunning efficiency. "She's been saying things for a while," Sarah admitted quietly, her gaze fixed on the garden below. I turned to look at her. "What things?" Sarah hesitated. "Just little things. That you were having a hard time after your breakup with Mark. That you were feeling a little lost. She made it sound like she was worried about you." Of course she did. Lily was a master at framing her attacks as concern. She would plant seeds of doubt, paint a picture of me as fragile and struggling, and then when she finally struck, people would be more inclined to believe her version of events. She had been laying the groundwork for this for months. "I'm not lost," I said, my voice low and firm. "I'm fine. Or I was." The door opened again. This time it was my mother. Her face was a mask of distress. "Clara, what is going on? People are talking. Mark is still standing there." "I don't know, Mom," I said, feeling a surge of frustration. "You should be asking Lily. She's the one who gave the speech." "Lily is emotional," my mother said, using the same excuse she had used for Lily's behavior my entire life. "Her big night. She's just overwhelmed. And then your old boyfriend shows up. It's a lot for her to handle." I stared at her, dumbfounded. A lot for her to handle? She just accused me of trying to steal her fiancé in front of 100 people. "And you're worried about how she's feeling?" My mother flinched. "Well, it was a terrible thing to say, of course. But you know how she gets. She exaggerates. And Mark showing up just looks so odd." It was then that I understood. My mother wasn't going to defend me. She was going to smooth things over. She was going to manage the situation, which meant managing me. She wanted me to go back inside, pretend it was all a misunderstanding, and help put Lily's party back on track. In her world, keeping the peace was more important than finding the truth. "I'm not going back in there," I said flatly. "Don't be dramatic, Clara," she said, her tone shifting from worried to annoyed. "You'll just make it worse. You need to go talk to Mark and ask him to leave." Quietly. "Why do I need to do it?" I asked. "I didn't invite him." "Because he's your ex," she said, as if that explained everything. "It's your responsibility." The injustice of it all was suffocating. I was the victim of a public smear campaign by my own sister, and somehow, I was the one who had to clean up the mess. My resolve hardened. I was not going to play their game anymore. "No," I said. "I'm not doing it." I pushed past her and walked back into the party. The atmosphere was thick with whispers. People stopped talking when I approached. I ignored them all. I walked straight to the back of the room where Mark was now talking to my father. My father looked grim. Mark just looked miserable. "Mark?" I said, my voice steady. Both men turned to look at me. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" I asked. Mark nodded, looking relieved to be rescued from my father's interrogation. We moved to a quieter corner of the room near a large window. I could still feel everyone's eyes on us. "Clara, I am so sorry," he said immediately. "I have no idea what's happening. I don't know why she said that." "Why are you here, Mark?" I asked, my voice softer now. I needed to know. I needed to understand how this piece of the puzzle fit into Lily's twisted picture. He looked genuinely bewildered. "I was invited. I got a text message from Lily." My blood ran cold. "From Lily? What did it say?" He pulled out his phone. He fumbled with it for a moment, his hands shaking slightly. Then he showed me the screen. The message was from my sister's number. I recognized it instantly. The text read, "Hi, Mark. It's Lily, Clara's sister. I know this is random, but we're having a small family thing tonight. Clara has been talking about you. I think she misses you and regrets how things ended. She's too proud to reach out herself. I think it would mean a lot to her if you just showed up. Surprise her." I read the message 3 times. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. She had not only set me up, she had used Mark to do it. She had lured him here with a lie, promising him a chance at reconciliation, knowing full well it would explode in both of our faces. "She told me you wanted to see me," Mark said, his voice filled with a mixture of hurt and anger. "She made it sound like I was doing a good thing." I looked from the phone back to his face. He was a pawn in her game, just like me. He had been used to add a layer of credibility to her lies, to make me look not just like a threat to her relationship, but also pathetically hung up on my past. "She lied, Mark," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "She lied to both of us." Across the room, I saw Lily watching us. She was standing with a small group of her friends, her expression one of deep concern, as if she were watching a tragedy unfold. She was playing her part perfectly. The worried sister, forced to watch her unstable sibling make a scene. I felt a rage so pure and so cold it cleared my mind of all the hurt and confusion. This was not an emotional outburst. This was not an exaggeration. This was a deliberate, malicious act designed to destroy my reputation. And I was not going to let her get away with it. Not this time. I looked at Mark. "Will you do me a favor?" I asked. "Anything?" he said, his eyes hard. He understood now. He knew he had been played. "Stay," I said. "Don't leave. Just stay here." He looked surprised, but he nodded. "Okay, I will." I turned and walked back toward the center of the room, my purpose clear. My mother tried to intercept me, her face pleading. "Clara, please, just let it go. We can talk about this tomorrow." "No," I said, my voice carrying in the quiet room. "We're going to talk about it now." I walked directly to where Lily was standing. Her friends melted away, sensing a confrontation. David, her fiancé, stepped forward, a protective look on his face. "Clara, maybe this isn't the time," he said gently. "It's the perfect time," I replied, my eyes locked on my sister. "Lily, you have some explaining to do." Lily raised her chin, her victim mask firmly in place. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're the one who is causing a scene." "Am I?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "You just gave a speech. You accused me of stealing your life. And then you accused me of stealing your man. And then, as if on cue, my ex-boyfriend walks through the door. What a coincidence." "I have no idea why he's here," she said, her eyes wide and innocent. "You must have invited him to try and ruin my night." "That's a very serious accusation, Lily," I said. "Are you sure you want to stick with that story?" This is it, I thought. This is the moment. My heart is pounding, but my voice is steady. I feel a strange sense of power. The truth is on my side. "Of course I'm sure," she said, her voice dripping with false confidence. "Everyone knows how you get. You can't stand it when I'm happy." "You invited him, Lily," I said, the words clear and precise. "You sent him a text message from your phone. You lied to him and told him I wanted to see him. You used him to create this drama." A flicker of panic crossed her face. It was there for only a second, but I saw it. David saw it too. He looked at her, a question in his eyes. "Lily, is that true?" "No," she cried, turning to him. "She's lying. She's trying to turn you against me. She's always been jealous of me." "Then you won't mind showing us your phone," I said, holding out my hand. "Show us your sent messages. Prove to everyone that I'm the liar you say I am." The color drained from her face. She clutched her small evening bag to her chest, where I knew her phone was. She looked trapped. The entire room was watching, waiting. Her perfect party had turned into a courtroom, and she was the one on trial. "This is ridiculous," she stammered. "I don't have to prove anything to you." "No," I agreed. "You don't. But I think David might want to see. And Mom and Dad." I glanced at our parents. My father looked torn, but my mother was staring at Lily, a dawning horror on her face. For the first time, she wasn't seeing her emotional, overwhelmed daughter. She was seeing a manipulator. "Lily, just show us the phone," my father said, his voice low and firm. Lily's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, for an ally. But she found none. Her friends looked away, suddenly fascinated by their shoes. David had taken a step back from her, his arms crossed over his chest. She was alone. With a trembling hand, she opened her purse and took out her phone. She knew it was over. We all did. The lie had been too big, too public. And the evidence was right there in her hand. I did not feel triumphant. I felt a deep, aching sadness. This was my sister, and this is what she was willing to do to me. The rage had cooled, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. The relationship I thought we had, flawed as it was gone forever. It had been replaced by this ugly, twisted thing she had created. I decided then that this was not just about exposing a single lie. It was about understanding why. Why would she go to such lengths to hurt me? What had I ever done to deserve this level of hatred? The investigation had just begun. After the confrontation, the party dissolved. People left in awkward, quiet groups, murmuring to each other. Lily had locked herself in a bathroom, refusing to come out. My parents were trying to talk to her through the door, their voices a mixture of anger and confusion. David had cornered me by the fireplace, his face pale. "I don't understand," he said, shaking his head. "Why would she do that? Why would she make up something so cruel?" "I don't know, David," I answered honestly. "But I'm going to find out." He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. "She said other things about you. To me." "I'm sure she has," I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. "She told me you were resentful of our engagement." he continued, as if needing to confess. She said you made little comments trying to undermine her confidence. She said you were calling her constantly, crying about Mark, trying to make her feel guilty for being happy. Each word was a small, sharp sting. Lily had been building a narrative for him, brick by brick, painting me as a pathetic, jealous monster. She was isolating me from him, ensuring that if I ever did try to warn him about her, he would be predisposed to disbelieve me. None of that is true, I said quietly. I've been busy with work. I've been happy for her. Or I thought I was. I think I need to go, David said, looking toward the closed bathroom door. I need to think. He gave me a final, troubled look and walked out of the house, leaving a void where a celebration had been. Mark was one of the last to leave. He waited patiently until I was done talking to David. Are you okay? He asked. I will be, I said. Thank you for staying. And thank you for showing me that text. I'm sorry you were dragged into this. Don't be sorry, he said, his expression serious. I'm glad I know what she's really like. She contacted me a few times after we broke up. This was new information. She did? What did she say? He hesitated. At the time, I thought she was just being a good friend. She said she was worried about you, that you weren't handling the breakup well. She would tell me things, little stories that made it sound like you were the one who was unstable. It made me feel better about the split, if I'm being honest. It made it feel like it wasn't my fault. I felt a fresh wave of sickness. Lily hadn't just used him tonight. She had been manipulating him for months, poisoning my memory and his mind. She was rewriting our history, not just for my family, but for the people in my past as well. Mark, would you be willing to send me screenshots of those conversations? I asked. I need to see what she said. He nodded without hesitation. Of course. I'll send them to you tonight. Be careful, Clara. This is darker than I thought. He left, and I was finally alone in the wreckage of the party. My parents were still upstairs. I could hear my mother's muffled sobs. I walked through the empty room, past plates of uneaten food and abandoned glasses of champagne. The festive decorations now seemed mocking. I went home to my small apartment, the silence a welcome relief. My phone buzzed. It was Mark. He had sent over a dozen screenshots. I sat on my couch and began to read. The messages were chilling. Lily had crafted a careful, insidious narrative. She told Mark I had started arguments with her over nothing. She claimed I was obsessed with the idea that everyone was leaving me. She twisted innocent comments I had made into signs of deep-seated jealousy. She even invented a story about me showing up at her work unannounced, crying and making a scene. It was a complete fabrication, a work of fiction designed to make me look unhinged. Reading those texts, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. The Clara she described was a person I didn't know, but she had made her real for Mark. And for David. And who else? How many other people had she been feeding these lies to? My sadness began to curdle back into anger. This was not about a single impulsive act at a party. This was a long-term campaign. But why? The stolen life comment from her speech echoed in my head. She had always been dramatic, always claimed I had it easier. Our parents, in their effort to be fair, had often overcompensated for my quiet nature, giving me praise for things that came easily to me, while Lily, who had to work harder for her achievements, often felt overlooked. I had always been sensitive to that, trying to step back and let her have her moments. But this was beyond simple jealousy. This was malicious. There had to be another reason. Something deeper that I was missing. Money? Our parents were comfortable, but not wealthy. There was no great inheritance to fight over. Status? Marrying David would certainly elevate her social standing, but why did she need to tear mine down in the process? I thought back over the past year. Lily had been under a lot of stress. She had quit her job a few months ago, saying she wanted to focus on planning the wedding. David was supportive, but I knew Lily hated feeling dependent on anyone. She had always been fiercely proud of making her own way. I remembered a strange conversation we had a few weeks ago. I had called to ask about wedding details. She had been evasive and stressed. When I asked if everything was okay, she had snapped at me. "Everything's fine," she had said sharply. "Not that you would care. You're probably thrilled that I'm so stressed out." I had been taken aback. "Why would I be thrilled, Lily? I'm just trying to help." "Just leave me alone, Clara," she had said, and hung up. At the time, I had dismissed it as wedding stress, but now it seemed like part of a larger pattern. She was pushing me away, creating a narrative where I was the villain, the source of her problems. The next morning, I got a call from my father. His voice was tired. "Your mother and I need to talk to you," he said. "Can you come over for lunch?" "Is Lily going to be there?" I asked. "No," he said. "She's staying with a friend. She won't talk to us." I agreed to go, though I dreaded it. I knew what this conversation would be. It would be about forgiveness, about moving on, about family. I was right. When I arrived, my mother's eyes were red and swollen. My father looked like he hadn't slept. They sat me down at the kitchen table, a plate of untouched sandwiches between us. "We are so sorry, Clara," my father began. "What Lily did was inexcusable." "We know she has always been difficult," my mother added. "She has this idea in her head that you've had everything easy. We may have contributed to that. We never wanted to make her feel less than." "But this is different," my father said. "This was a calculated public attack. We don't know what to do." "What did she say when you confronted her?" I asked. My mother sighed. "She denies everything. She says you are twisting it all, that you hacked her phone and sent those texts to mark yourself. She says you're trying to ruin her life because you're jealous she's getting married." I felt a cold laugh bubble up in my throat. Of course. Double down on the lie. Paint me as not just unstable, but a criminal mastermind. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. "And you don't believe her, do you?" I asked, looking from one parent to the other. "No, of course not," my father said quickly. "But Clara, she's our daughter, she's your sister. She's clearly in a lot of pain to be acting this way. We need to find a way to fix this." "Fix this?" I repeated. "How do you propose we fix this? She has been lying about me for months, possibly years, to everyone who will listen. She tried to publicly humiliate me and destroy my reputation. There is no fixing that." "We could try family therapy," my mother suggested, her voice hopeful. "Maybe a professional could help us understand why she's feeling this way." I shook my head. "Therapy is for people who want to change. Lily doesn't want to change. She wants to win. She sees this as a competition, and she is willing to do anything to come out on top." I knew I had to find the real reason for her desperation. The lies were a symptom of a bigger problem. I decided to start with her finances. Quitting her job before a big wedding seemed odd. Lily loved her job in marketing. She was good at it. Why would she give it up? I decided to do some quiet digging. I started with her social media. Her posts were a curated highlight reel of wedding planning, dress fittings, cake tastings, venue visits. All of it looked expensive. David's family was wealthy, but I knew David was trying to make his own way and wasn't just living off a trust fund. Were they living beyond their means? I called Sarah, my cousin. After the party, she was firmly on my side. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and it's weird," I started. "Do you know anything about Lily's money situation?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "It's funny you should ask," she said slowly. "A few weeks ago, she called me. She asked to borrow money. A lot of money." My stomach tightened. "What for?" "She was really vague," Sarah said. "She said it was for a wedding expense that came up unexpectedly. I told her I couldn't help her. I just don't have that kind of cash. She got really cold and hung up. I thought it was strange." "How much did she ask for?" I asked. $10,000, Sarah replied. I was stunned. $10,000 was not a minor wedding expense. That was a significant amount of money. Where was David in all this? Did he know she was asking relatives for loans? Did she say why she couldn't ask David or our parents? I asked. She said she didn't want to worry them, Sarah said. She made it sound like she was trying to be responsible and handle it herself, but it felt off. It was more than off. It was a huge red flag. Lily was secretive about money, and she was desperate. This desperation was the engine driving her campaign against me. But how were the two things connected? Was she in some kind of trouble? I decided my next step was to find out why she had really left her job. The story about focusing on the wedding didn't add up. Lily was ambitious. She wouldn't just quit a good job without a very good reason. I had a friend, a woman named Megan, who used to work at the same company as Lily, in a different department. We weren't close, but we were friendly. I decided to take a chance and call her. Megan, hi, it's Clara, Lily's sister, I said, trying to sound casual. This is going to sound really random, but I was just thinking about Lily and I realized I never got the full story on why she left the company. Was everything okay? Megan was quiet for a moment. Oh, hi, Clara. Yeah, that was a situation. A situation? I prompted. What do you mean? She sighed. Look, I probably shouldn't be telling you this. It was all kept very quiet. But since you're her sister, Lily didn't quit. She was fired. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Fired? Why? She was one of their top performers. She was, Megan agreed. But she got caught embezzling. Not a lot at first. Padding expense reports, using the company card for personal items. But then they did an audit and found she had been creating fake vendor invoices and paying them into an account she controlled. It was over $50,000. I couldn't breathe. $50,000. My sister was a thief, an embezzler. The company didn't press charges. Megan continued, her voice low. They have a reputation to protect, and the publicity would have been a nightmare. They let her sign a non-disclosure agreement and pay the money back in installments. They gave her a month to come up with the first payment. I think that was right around the time she quit. Suddenly, everything made a horrible, sickening kind of sense. The desperation for money, the stress, the secrets. She hadn't quit her job to plan a wedding. She had been fired for stealing, and she was on the hook for a massive debt. She couldn't tell David because he would leave her. She couldn't tell our parents because they would be devastated and ashamed. So she was trying to get the money from somewhere else, like Sarah. But how did I fit into this? Why the vicious campaign to discredit me? And then I saw it. The final, terrible piece of the puzzle fell into place. It wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about sibling rivalry. It was about her survival. If her secret ever came out, she would lose everything. David, his family's money, her reputation. She needed an escape plan. She needed a scapegoat. If she could convince everyone, especially David and our parents, that I was an unstable, jealous, manipulative person, then if the truth about her past ever surfaced, she could blame me. She could claim I fabricated the story out of spite. She could say I was trying to ruin her life, just like she had been telling everyone for months. The public takedown at the engagement party wasn't the main event. It was just another brick in the wall she was building around herself. A wall designed to protect her from the consequences of her own actions. And I was the material she was using to build it. The knowledge was a cold, hard weight in my chest. My sister was not just a liar and a manipulator. She was a criminal. And she was trying to preemptively destroy my credibility to save herself. I thanked Megan for her honesty and hung up the phone. I sat in silence for a long time, the pieces of Lily's plan laid out before me. The fake stories to Mark and David, the public humiliation, the constant portrayal of me as the difficult one. It all served one purpose, to make me an unreliable witness against her. My first instinct was to call my parents and tell them everything, but I stopped myself. What would they do? They would be horrified, yes, but they would also try to protect Lily. They would try to handle it within the family. They would probably offer to pay back the money for her, to sweep it all under the rug. And in that process, my own pain and the damage she had done to me would be minimized. They would see Lily as a victim of her own poor choices, someone who needed help. They would not see her as the malicious perpetrator she was. And what about David? If I went to him with this story now, after Lily had spent months poisoning his mind against me, would he even believe me? Or would he see it as the ultimate act of a jealous sister, a desperate, unbelievable lie designed to break them up? Lily had insulated herself perfectly. No, I couldn't just tell people. I needed proof. Undeniable, irrefutable proof. The text messages from Mark were a start, but they only proved the setup for the party. They didn't prove the why. I needed evidence of the embezzlement. I knew it would be difficult. The company had handled it quietly. The non-disclosure agreement meant no one would talk officially. But Megan had talked. Maybe someone else would, too. I started thinking about Lily's closest friend at her old job, a woman named Chloe. Lily and Chloe had been inseparable. If anyone knew the details of what had happened, it would be her. But she was loyal to Lily. She would never talk to me. Unless Lily had burned that bridge too. Desperate people often make mistakes. They alienate their allies. Had Lily's desperation caused her to turn on her best friend? I found Chloe on social media. Her profile was public. I scrolled through her recent posts. Lots of pictures with friends, nights out, a recent vacation. But there were no pictures with Lily. Not for the last 2 months. For two people who were supposedly best friends, that was strange. Before that, they were in each other's posts constantly. Something had happened. I decided to take another risk. I sent Chloe a message. I kept it simple and non-threatening. Hi, Chloe. It's Clara, Lily's sister. I know we don't know each other well, but I was hoping I could talk to you about something important regarding Lily. I'm worried about her. I used Lily's own tactic against her. The language of concern. I waited. For a whole day, there was no reply. I started to think it was a dead end. Then, late the next night, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Chloe. I don't know if I should be talking to you, she wrote. But yes, I'm worried too. What Lily did was wrong. My heart leaped. What she did to who? I typed back, holding my breath. To me, Chloe replied, and to the company. And now it sounds like to you too. We arranged to meet for coffee the next day. I chose a small, quiet cafe far from either of our neighborhoods. I was nervous. Chloe held the key to everything. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a small table in the corner. She looked stressed, her hands wrapped around a large mug of coffee. Thanks for meeting me, I said, sitting down. I almost didn't come, she admitted. Lily made me promise not to talk to anyone, but I can't protect her anymore. Not after what she did. What happened between you two? I asked gently. Chloe took a deep breath. She asked me to help her after she got fired. She wanted me to create a fake paper trail to make it look like one of our bosses signed off on the invoices. She wanted me to help her frame him. I was speechless. Framing her boss. That was a level of deceit I hadn't even considered. I told her no, of course, Chloe said, her voice trembling with anger. I told her she was crazy. I could lose my job. I could face criminal charges. And she turned on me. She said I was a terrible friend. She said I was jealous of her and David. She accused me of wanting her to fail. It was like she became a different person. She said the same things about me, I said quietly. I'm not surprised, Chloe said, shaking her head. When she couldn't get me to help, she tried to blackmail me. She knew about a mistake I made on a project last year. Something that could have gotten me in trouble if it came out. She threatened to tell our boss if I didn't help her. That's when I cut her off. I told her I was done. This was it. This was the proof I needed. Lily wasn't just a thief. She was willing to blackmail and frame innocent people to cover her tracks. Chloe, I said, leaning forward. The company made her sign an agreement to pay the money back. Do you have any proof of that? Any emails? Any documents? She bit her lip, thinking. The head of human resources handled everything. His name is Mr. Harrison. He was the one who conducted the investigation. He sent an email to the senior management team summarizing the findings and the repayment agreement. I was accidentally copied on it. I deleted it right away. I was so scared. But what? I pressed. I might still have it. In my deleted items folder on my work computer, I never empty it. My pulse quickened. Is there any way you could get it? Could you forward it to me? She looked terrified. If they found out, I'd be fired on the spot. It's a huge breach of confidentiality. I know, I said, my voice low and urgent. I know I'm asking a lot, but she is trying to destroy my life to save her own. She is painting me as a monster to my entire family, to her fiancé. If this continues, she might actually succeed. This email could be the only thing that can stop her. I saw the conflict in her eyes. She was weighing her loyalty against her conscience, her fear against her anger at being betrayed by her friend. Let me think about it, she said finally. I can't make any promises. I knew I couldn't push her. I gave her my email address and thanked her for her honesty. I left the cafe feeling a strange mix of hope and dread. Everything depended on Chloe and an email she may or may not be able to retrieve. For the next 2 days, I lived in a state of suspended animation. I checked my email every 5 minutes. I avoided calls from my parents. I just waited. I tried to imagine what I would do if Chloe didn't come through. Could I still expose Lily without concrete proof? It would be my word against hers. And she had been working for months to make sure no one would ever choose my word. Then, on the 3rd day, an email appeared in my inbox. The sender was an anonymous, encrypted email service. The subject line was blank. My hands were shaking as I opened it. There was no text in the body of the email, just one attachment, a PDF file. I clicked on it. It was a scanned copy of a formal letter from the company's legal department to Lily. It detailed the findings of their internal audit, listing the exact dates and amounts of the fraudulent invoices. It specified the total amount embezzled, $52,480, and it outlined the terms of the repayment agreement. She had to make an initial payment of $10,000 within 30 days, followed by monthly payments until the debt was cleared. If she missed a single payment, the company reserved the right to pursue criminal charges. The letter was dated 2 weeks before Lily and David's engagement party. I stared at the document on my screen. This was the smoking gun. This was the motive. The desperation, the lies, the attack on me. It was all here, explained in cold, legal language. She hadn't been asking Sarah for money for a wedding expense. She had been trying to make the first payment to avoid going to jail. Attached to the letter was the email Chloe had told me about, from Mr. Harrison to the executive team. It summarized the situation and confirmed that Lily had been terminated and had agreed to the repayment terms to avoid prosecution. I now had undeniable proof. Chloe had come through. She had taken a huge risk for me, for the truth. I saved the documents to a secure drive and deleted the email. Now I had to decide what to do with them. Who did I show them to first? David? My parents? Going to my parents first felt like the wrong move. They would be crushed, and their immediate instinct would be to protect Lily, to hide the shame. They would try to contain the problem. But this problem couldn't be contained. It had to be exposed. It had to be David. He was the person Lily had deceived the most. He was planning to build a life with her, to marry her. He had a right to know who he was really engaged to. His reaction would determine everything. I called him. My voice was surprisingly calm. David, it's Clara, I said. I need to see you. There's something you need to know about Lily. Something important. Clara, I don't know, he said, his voice weary. Things are so complicated right now. Lily is a mess. She's been telling me you're harassing her. I'm not harassing her, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm telling you, you need to see this. It will explain everything. Her speech at the party, the lies, everything. He was silent for a moment. Okay, he said, his voice filled with resignation. Where? We met at the same quiet cafe where I had met Chloe. I felt like it was becoming my office for dismantling my sister's life of lies. I arrived early and got a table in the back. I had the documents printed out and tucked into a plain manila envelope. When David arrived, he looked terrible. He had dark circles under his eyes and he hadn't shaved. The confident, happy man from the engagement party was gone, replaced by someone weighed down by suspicion and doubt. What is this, Clara? He asked, sitting down without ordering anything. If this is just more drama, I don't think I can handle it. It's not drama, I said. It's the truth. I slid the envelope across the table. Read this, I said. He looked at the envelope, then at me. He hesitated, then opened it and pulled out the papers. He started with the legal letter. I watched his face as he read. His expression shifted from weariness to confusion, then to disbelief, and finally, to a cold, hard anger. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the edges of the paper. He read it twice, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then he read the email from the head of Human Resources. He put the papers down on the table and stared at them, his jaw tight. He was silent for what felt like an eternity. She told me she quit to focus on the wedding, he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. I know, I said softly. She told me she had some savings to contribute to our future, he continued, his voice growing harder. But she's in debt for $50,000. She's been lying to me about everything. He looked up from the papers and met my eyes. The confusion was gone, replaced by a terrible clarity. The money, he said, almost to himself. A few weeks ago, she asked me for a loan, $10,000. She said her wedding dress cost more than she expected and she didn't want to bother her parents. She said she'd pay me back after we were married. He had almost given her the money she needed to pay off the first installment, the money to keep her secret safe. This is why she did it, he said, his voice shaking with fury. This is why she attacked you at the party. She was creating a smokescreen. If this ever came out, she wanted me to think it was you, that you had made it all up to destroy her. Yes, I said. That's exactly it. He slumped back in his chair, running a hand over his face. He looked utterly broken. I felt a pang of pity for him. He was a victim in this too. He had been manipulated and deceived by the woman he loved. What do I do now? He asked, his voice a whisper. That's up to you, David, I said. But you can't unknow this. You can't pretend this isn't who she is. He nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the papers. The wedding is off. I can't marry a stranger, a criminal. I felt a wave of relief. He believed me. He saw the truth. The first part of my plan had worked. Now for the hardest part, my parents. Will you come with me to talk to my parents? I asked. They need to hear it from you too. They need to understand that this isn't just me being vengeful. This is real. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a new, grim resolve. Yes, he said. I will. They deserve to know who their daughter really is. We drove to my parents' house in silence. David held the envelope in his lap like it was a bomb. When we arrived, my parents were surprised to see him. David, is everything all right? Is Lily with you? My mother asked, her face hopeful. No, David said, his voice firm. Lily is not with me. We need to talk to you. Both of you. We sat them down in the living room, the same room where they had asked me to forgive my sister just a few days ago. The atmosphere was heavy with dread. I let David do the talking. He laid the papers out on the coffee table, just as I had done for him. He explained what they were, his voice steady and cold. I watched my parents' faces as the reality of the situation sank in. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. My father read the letter, his face growing pale, his expression hardening into a mask of disbelief and then profound disappointment. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by my mother's quiet, choked sobs. "I don't believe it," she whispered, shaking her head. "There must be a mistake. Our Lily wouldn't do this." "It's not a mistake, Mom," I said gently. "It's the truth. This is why she's been acting this way. This is why she lied." My father put the papers down. He looked older than I had ever seen him. "She stole from her company. She lied to us. She lied to David. And she tried to destroy you, Clara, to cover it up." He said each sentence like a final judgment. "We have to call her," my mother said, tears streaming down her face. "We have to hear her side of the story." "There is no other side," David said flatly. "There are the lies and there is this. I've made my decision. The engagement is over. I'm going to go pack her things from my apartment. You can tell her to come and get them from your garage." He stood up, his part in this done. "I'm sorry," he said to my parents. "I truly am. I thought I knew her." He gave me a single, grateful nod, and then he left. The front door clicked shut, leaving the three of us in the ruins of our family. My mother was inconsolable. My father, however, seemed to have found a cold, hard center of anger. "You will call her," he said to my mother, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You will tell her to come here. Now, she is not going to hide from this." My mother, still weeping, pulled out her phone and dialed Lily's number. She put it on speakerphone. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "She's not answering," my mother sobbed. "Then leave her a message," my father commanded. "Tell her that David knows everything. Tell her that we know everything. Tell her she has 1 hour to get to this house, or I will go to the police myself." It was the harshest I had ever heard my father speak, but he was right. The time for enabling and making excuses was over. Lily had to face the consequences. My mother left a trembling, tearful message. We then sat in the living room and waited. It was the longest hour of my life. I felt no satisfaction, no joy in my victory. Just a profound and hollow sadness. This was the end of my family as I knew it. 45 minutes later, a car screeched to a halt in the driveway. A door slammed. A few moments later, the front door burst open. Lily stood there, her face white with fury. "What have you done?" she shrieked, her eyes blazing at me. "You ruined my life." "You did this to yourself, Lily," my father said, his voice like ice. "We know about the money. We know about the job." Lily's face crumpled. The rage dissolved, replaced by a desperate panic. She looked from my father to my mother, searching for her usual ally. "Mommy, you can't believe her," she pleaded, her voice turning into a childish whine. "She's making it all up. She's always been jealous. She faked those documents." "We saw them, Lily," my mother said, her voice broken. "The letter from the lawyers. David saw them too. He's ending the engagement." At the mention of David's name, a fresh wave of fury washed over Lily. She turned back to me. You couldn't stand to see me happy. You had to take him from me." "This was never about David," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "This was about you. You got caught, and you were going to burn me to the ground to save yourself. Did you really think I would just let you?" "I hate you," she screamed, her whole body shaking. "I have always hated you. You got everything. The praise, the attention, the easy life. I had to fight for every single thing, and you just floated through." "I floated through?" I asked, a lifetime of frustration bubbling to the surface. "I stayed quiet so you could be loud. I stepped back so you could be in the spotlight. I downplayed my successes so you wouldn't feel bad. I spent my entire life trying to manage your jealousy." And this is my reward? You try to frame me as a crazy, vindictive monster to cover up your own crimes? The truth of my words seemed to finally penetrate her rage. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. She had no defense. The lies had run out. You will pay back the money, my father said, his voice cold and final. You will get a job, any job, and you will pay it back. You will write a letter of apology to Clara, and you will get professional help. Those are the terms. If you refuse any of them, you are no longer welcome in this house. Lily looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had never been given an ultimatum before. She had always been coddled, her behavior excused, but she had finally pushed them too far. She let out a strangled sob and ran up the stairs to her old bedroom, slamming the door behind her. My mother started to get up, her instinct to go and comfort her daughter still strong. My father put a hand on her arm. No, he said softly. Not this time. This time she has to face it alone. In the days that followed, a fragile and tense new reality settled over our family. Lily stayed in her room, refusing to see or speak to anyone. David dropped off all of her belongings in labeled boxes on our front porch, a final, silent statement. He never called or came inside. My parents moved through the house like ghosts. My mother was grieving the daughter she thought she had, and my father was grappling with a deep, simmering anger and disappointment. Our family was broken, and I wasn't sure it could ever be put back together. I focused on my own life. I went to work. I saw my friends. I tried to build a new normal for myself, one that wasn't defined by my sister's drama. Sarah called often to check in on me, her support a lifeline in the quiet aftermath. About a week after the confrontation, I received a letter in the mail. It was a single sheet of paper, folded in 3. The handwriting was Lily's. It was the apology my father had demanded. It was short and stilted. I am sorry for what I did at the engagement party, and for the things I said. It was wrong. That was it. No real remorse, no explanation, no accountability for the months of lies, for the embezzlement, for the attempt to destroy my life. It was the apology of someone who had been forced to write it. I read it once and threw it in the trash. It meant nothing. A few days later, my father called me. Lily has agreed to the terms, he said, his voice heavy. She started looking for a job, and we've made an appointment for her with a therapist. That's good, I said, though I felt no relief. She wants to see you, he added. She wants to talk. I felt a cold knot of dread in my stomach. I don't think that's a good idea. Clara, please, he urged, for your mother's sake. She thinks if you two can just talk, we can start to heal. I knew he was asking me to do it for them, not for me. He was asking me to once again be the peacemaker, to smooth over the cracks in our shattered family. And a part of me, the part that had been trained for this role my entire life, wanted to agree. But another, stronger part of me said no. I can't, Dad, I said, my voice firm. I have nothing to say to her. And I am not interested in hearing any more of her excuses or her blame. Maybe one day, years from now, that will change. But not now. I need space. I need to heal from what she did to me. He was silent for a long moment. I could hear the disappointment in his breathing. I understand, he said finally, though I knew he didn't. Not really. Setting that boundary was one of the hardest things I had ever done, but it was also the most freeing. I was no longer responsible for managing Lily's emotions or for keeping my parents happy. I was only responsible for myself. The next few months were quiet. I heard through my father that Lily had found a job as a waitress. She was making her payments to her old company. She was going to therapy. On the surface, it looked like progress. But I knew my sister. She was likely just playing a role, doing what was required of her until the heat was off. I had one final piece of business to take care of. I met Mark for coffee. I wanted to thank him properly and close that chapter for good. I heard about what happened, he said after we ordered. With her fiancé and everything, that's rough. It's for the best, I said. He deserved to know the truth. We all do, he said, looking at me with a sad smile. You know, for a long time after we broke up, I really believed those things she told me about you. It made it easier for me to move on, thinking you were the one with the problems. I'm so sorry, Clara. I should have known better. I should have trusted the person I knew, not the stories she was telling. We were all manipulated by her, Mark, I said. You, me, David, our parents. She's very good at it. Well, he said, raising his coffee cup in a small toast. Here's to no more manipulation. I'll drink to that, I said, clinking my cup against his. We talked for a while longer, about our lives, our jobs, our futures. It was easy and comfortable. The romantic feelings were long gone, replaced by a quiet, shared understanding. When we said goodbye, it felt like a true and final closure. As I walked home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. The drama was over. The lies had been exposed. The consequences were being dealt. I had done what I needed to do. But the story wasn't quite over. About 6 months after the disastrous engagement party, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the button. Hello? Is this Clara? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who is this? My name is Amanda. I was a friend of Lily's, from her new job. My guard went up immediately. Okay. I know this is weird, she said, her voice rushed. But I think there's something you should know. Lily was fired from the restaurant last week. Fired? Why? I asked, a sense of weary resignation washing over me. She was caught stealing, Amanda said, skimming cash from the register. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. They have her on camera. I closed my eyes. Of course, she hadn't changed at all. She hadn't learned a thing. The therapy, the apology, the promises to our parents. It was all an act. She was still the same person, just with a new set of circumstances. But that's not why I'm calling, Amanda continued. Before she left, she was telling everyone at work this crazy story. She said that her family was forcing her to work this terrible job to pay off a fake debt that her jealous sister had invented to ruin her life. She said you faked documents and blackmailed her ex-fiancé to break up with her. She was painting you as some kind of evil genius. I was silent. I should have been shocked, but I wasn't. I was just tired. So incredibly tired of her. I didn't believe her, Amanda said. She seemed unstable, but a few of the other people did. They feel sorry for her. And I just thought, you should know. She's still out there, telling the same lies just to a new audience. Thank you for telling me, Amanda, I said, my voice flat. I appreciate it. I hung up the phone. For a moment, I considered calling my father. I considered telling him that his daughter's rehabilitation was a sham. I considered showing him that she was still trying to paint me as the villain. But then I stopped. What would be the point? It would only cause my parents more pain. And it would drag me right back into the center of her storm. I had fought my battle. I had won. I had exposed the truth to the people who mattered. David and our parents. What Lily did now, in her own small, sad world, was no longer my problem. She could tell her stories to strangers. She could spin her tales of victimhood to anyone who would listen. But she no longer had any power over me. She had lost her fiancé, her reputation with her family, and the trust of everyone who had ever been close to her. She was adrift, and she had cut her own rope. I deleted Amanda's number from my call history. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by my window, watching the city lights come on. The unsettling note was not that my sister was still a liar. It was the realization that she would always be a liar. Some people don't change. They just find a new audience. And my final act of victory was deciding I was no longer going to be in her audience. I was free. She had tried to steal my life, my reputation, my peace of mind. But in the end, the only life she had managed to ruin was her own. And I finally understood that her downfall was not my responsibility, but it was, in a strange and quiet way, my liberation. I stopped waiting for her to become a better person. I just accepted that she was not. And with that acceptance came a peace that was deeper and more lasting than any apology could ever have provided. The lingering unease was knowing she was still out there, a ghost haunting a life she'd thrown away, but she was a ghost that could no longer touch me. I had built my own walls now, not of lies, but of boundaries, and they were strong enough to keep her out for good.